Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Richard Douglas, and I'm very grateful to you for the opportunity to come and speak with you. I live in Prince George's County. I've been in Maryland for more than 30 years. I'm one of two Armed Forces veterans here at this table. Robert Broadus is the other, my brother Navy veteran. I enlisted at age 17 and I volunteered for the submarine service in the 1970s. I volunteered for Iraq in the 2000s, and I spent my 50th birthday in Baghdad. I worked in the U.S. Senate for 5 years. My boss was Jesse Helms, a senator from North Carolina. I was his treaty lawyer at the Foreign Relations Committee. I also served as general counsel at the Senate Intelligence Committee. I've been endorsed by Ambassador John Bolton, who some of you may have heard of. I met him when I was working for Senator Helms during the first Bush term. In addition, I served in the Pentagon for President Bush. I was Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for counter-narcotics. I was responsible for a $900 million annual budget. And my job basically was to help our combatant commanders in places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Colombia, deal with the drug problems and the trafficking problems that contributed to the insurgencies there. And as a result, I have, in addition to Iraq, a great deal of experience in Afghanistan and Pakistan. I have my own business. I'm involved in logistics, air cargo, very different kinds of transport aircraft. I've had a front row seat in the business world outside of our borders in seeing how our laws make it hard for American companies to sell our products overseas. I guess the three main points I'd like to make as we begin are that nobody else in this race except Van Carden has experience in the Senate. I learned mine from Jesse Helms. He's learning his from Harry Reid, and I think you can see quite a difference there. Nobody else in this race, including Van Carden, has the national security experience that I bring to the table. I was a diplomat in the Foreign Service, I was in the Armed Forces, and I also served in the Justice Department and the Intelligence Community. And last, I think my business experience gives me a great advantage over Mr. Carden, because outside of the General Assembly and the U.S. Congress, he's never held a job in the commercial sector. And with that, I'll be quiet and pass the mic down to Robert Broadus. The most important thing I can do as a U.S. Senator is to make the Senate do its job. Last August, the American people stood up and together said, we want a solution to this debt ceiling problem, and we want it now. In the same week, the Taliban shot down a helicopter in Afghanistan, killing 25 of our sailors. And what did the Congress do? They went on vacation for the month of August. That's unacceptable, and that's why I'm in this race. I will take my knowledge of the Senate, the rules and the precedents, and I will break with party loyalty, and I will break with the people whose first concern is their job security on Capitol Hill, and I will force the Senate to do its job. I will stand up and I will object to a motion to recess, which is what our senators should have done, which is what all 100 of them should have done. But they didn't. That's because they lack a sense of duty and obligation to our people. That's the thing that I think is the most important that I can do for you as a U.S. Senator. And we will find a solution. We went to the moon 6 times. We would have gone 7 had Apollo 13 not failed. We can fix this debt problem, but we have to want to do it first. Ladies and gentlemen, why did the economic downturn happen? The answer is because Congress was sleeping with the enemy. If you look at the record of the subcommittee that Senator Carden served on during all the time that Wall Street was doing all these bad things, they did not hold a single hearing on anything happening on Wall Street. The downturn came because Congress was sleeping with the enemy. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Reserve, even the President are servants of Congress. Congress created these agencies. Congress can do what they want with them, but the buck stops with Congress. Senator Carden was taking money from Goldman Sachs and not holding hearings on these matters as our economy was coming to the edge of the cliff. If you want to change this kind of attitude and these problems, you've got to change the people. Every time Congress gets caught sleeping with the enemy, they enact a law like Dodd-Frank. They did it after 9/11 with the Homeland Security Act of 2002, with the Patriot Act, and the Intelligence Reform Act of 2004. That's what Congress does when you catch them sleeping on post. If you elect me, it's not going to happen again. As an Iraq veteran, this is an important question for me, because a lot of the arguments we're hearing today, one way or the other on Iran, sound familiar. I've flown over Iran in a commercial airliner many times during daylight, not U.S. flag. That's the last place I want to see an American soldier. Imagine flying over the Grand Canyon and then multiply it by about 10 times. That's what it's like on the ground in Iran. For me, the bottom line is this. If the government of Iran says it wants to wipe Israel off the map, believe them. If the people of Israel say they're going to defend themselves, believe them. They did it with the Osirak reactor in Iraq in 1982. They did it in Syria 2 years ago, and it would not surprise me if they do it again. Unfortunately, the team we have in the White House is the wrong team for this fight. They've thrown the Israelis under a bus on so many times we can hardly even keep track. And Senator Cardin hasn't said a word about it. In my opinion, we must look far beyond the impact of an Israeli-Iranian conflict, consider other elements, the ripple effect that would come from that with Russia, China, and other countries. I worked on the federal minimum wage when I was in high school. I made $1.82 an hour working as a cook at Red Lobster in St. Petersburg, Florida. I was grateful for my minimum wage. I was 17 years old. I had a 1965 Rambler to support, and frankly, I think we have to be honest with each other. The chances of the minimum wage going away, I think, are pretty low. I don't think the American people want it to go away. But I think what we do need is a reasonable approach where we balance the needs of people who really probably need that $1.82 an hour, or whatever it is now, against the interests of employers who would love to hire more people if they didn't have to pay as much. And we also have to take into account the interests of organized labor, because organized labor also benefits from the minimum wage, because employers who can't afford to pay a bunch of people the minimum wage will go to organized labor as an alternative. What would I do as a U.S. Senator? I would try to do the right thing. And the right thing, probably most of the time, is going to be to try to keep the minimum wage lower than higher so more people can benefit from it, not fewer people. But we can't do it in a way that's going to break the bank. Having said that, I think we also have to be realistic. The federal minimum wage is probably not going to go away. Here's an analogy. Stimulus versus a healthy economy. Stimulus is emergency medicine. It's the ambulance out on I-695 at 3 a.m. rolling up somebody and putting them on a gurney. Healthy economy is long-term therapy. 6, 8 months, 10 years, whatever it takes to bring that person back to health. The problem we have today is the guys doing the triage, the emergency medicine, they don't have medical degrees. They didn't go to medical school. They don't know anything about medicine. And our Congress is letting them get away with it. Why? Because our Congress doesn't know anything about it either. We have a senator in Maryland who's been in office for 44 years. He's never held a job in the private sector. That's the wrong guy to be writing national economic policy. The idea looks good in principle. Triage, emergency medicine, to keep people from sinking deeper into poverty, and then some kind of long-term therapy to truly heal our economy and bring it back to life. But unless you put the right doctors in the emergency room or in the physical therapy lab, it's not going to work. You can change that this year, 2012. We need new doctors. I spent 8 years in the U.S. Foreign Service, and my first assignment was Juarez, Mexico. I lived for 19 months in Juarez, Mexico, on the Mexican side of the border, and I worked in the American consulate. Every day I saw our border become Swiss cheese, and not because the Border Patrol didn't do its job. It didn't have enough resources to do its job. This is an issue close to my heart. I promise you, the U.S. Congress has not a clue about how the immigration system works in our country. They don't know how the law works, they don't know what's in the law, and you see that every day. We talk about this all day. I would like to say, though, that in my opinion, as long as Americans hire undocumented people, as long as Americans patronize the businesses formed by undocumented people, as long as Americans use illegal drugs smuggled into our country from Mexico, we will have a border security problem. So I think that this is a two-part approach. We must secure our border without turning our country into a high-security prison camp. But we must also look inward, because border security begins at home. And we must be responsible Americans in the way we hire people and whose businesses we patronize. If we take things seriously, because this is serious, those of you who've lived, I'm 55, you know serious. and we're in serious trouble right now. Your task is to look at this table and ask yourself, who's serious up there? Dan's right, this is an uphill battle. And for those of you who are former Marines, today's the anniversary of the flag raising on Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima. And I think that's a very important metaphor for what we're up against. Although I by no means intend to equate my brother and sister Marylanders outside of this room with the forces of evil that our people fought there. It's an uphill battle, but it's a battle worth fighting. And that's why we're here. I think the single most important thing I can do for the people of Maryland if I'm elected to this office is take my knowledge of the U.S. Senate, take my knowledge of the U.S. government and the business community, go to the Senate, stand up, show a little backbone, and say no at the appropriate moment. And if it means saying no to a Republican president, I'm your man. I've seen it done. Jesse Helms did it. John Bolton did it. I'll do it. And you know what's going to happen then? Other people are going to line up behind me. People who don't have the courage, but who may have the principle, they'll line up behind me. We will make a difference. One person can make a difference. 5 people can make a difference. Cortez conquered Mexico with 35 soldiers, and here we are today. If I can't make a difference in one term, I'm finished. The longest I would agree to stay in the Senate, if I met with your approval, would be 2 terms. I'm not going to be a lifelong politician. Because you lose perspective, you forget where you came from. Ben Cardin is one of those kinds of politicians. Now we have an opportunity to change him. Your task, and it's a tough task, is to look at this table and say, who do I think is the guy who can do that? I don't envy you, but I'm very happy that this crowd is here tonight, so we had a chance to show you what we've got. Thank you very much for your time.